The message came at 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Every screen on Earth went dark for exactly 3 seconds. Then the alien appeared. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like wet stone. His eyes were black pools without any white in them. He wore armor that shimmered like oil on water. Behind him, through a massive window, the stars stretched out forever, and floating in that darkness was a fleet of ships so large that the human mind struggled to understand their size. "I am Ambassador Zyrith Cole of the Velkorath Dominion," the alien said. His voice was cold and smooth, like ice sliding across glass. "We have watched your species for many of your years. We have studied your wars, your diseases, your endless fighting among yourselves. We have decided that you are not worthy of the stars." He paused. His thin lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "You have one rotation of your planet to surrender. Every government, every military, every weapon. You will become servants of the Dominion, as hundreds of species have before you. If you refuse, we will burn your world until nothing remains but ash and memory." The transmission ended. The screens returned to normal, and for a moment, the entire planet was silent. Then the panic began. In New York City, people ran screaming through Times Square. In Tokyo, the trains stopped running as workers abandoned their posts. In London, car accidents blocked every major road as drivers stared at their phones in horror. Churches filled with people praying. Hospitals filled with people having heart attacks. Gun stores sold out within the hour. World leaders scrambled to respond. The President of the United States called an emergency meeting. The Chinese premier demanded answers from his military. The Russian president mobilized his nuclear forces. Though everyone knew that nuclear weapons meant nothing against ships that could cross galaxies, news channels showed the same images over and over. Amateur astronomers had already found the fleet. It was passing Jupiter, a cloud of metal and death that blotted out the stars behind it. Military analysts counted over 4,000 ships. The smallest was the size of an aircraft carrier. The largest was the size of a small moon. Humanity had been reaching for the stars for less than a century. They had colonies on Mars and mining stations in the asteroid belt. Their fastest ships could barely reach a fraction of light speed. Against the Dominion, they were children with wooden swords facing an army of giants. General James Morrison sat in the Pentagon's war room and watched his officers argue. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Some wanted to launch every nuclear weapon at the approaching fleet. Some just sat in silence, their faces pale with shock. "We cannot win this," said Admiral Chen, his voice hollow. "The math is simple. They have 4,000 warships. We have 47 combat-capable vessels. Even if every single one of our ships destroyed 10 of theirs, we would still lose. So we just give up?" Colonel Sarah Mitchell slammed her fist on the table. "We just bow down and become slaves? What choice do we have?" The argument continued for hours. Similar arguments happened in military headquarters around the world. In Moscow, in Beijing, in London, and Paris and New Delhi, the same question echoed through every hall of power on Earth. What could they possibly do? The answer came from an unexpected place. Dr. Elena Vasquez was not a soldier. She was a physicist who worked at a research facility in Brazil. She had spent her life studying theoretical weapons systems that most governments dismissed as impossible. When the alien transmission ended, she did not panic. She picked up her phone and made a call. "It's time," she said. "Wake up the others." Around the world, other phones rang. Scientists who had worked in secret for decades answered. Engineers who had built things that officially did not exist opened hidden files. Military officers who had sworn oaths to projects that appeared in no-budget reports received coded messages. For 30 years, the world's governments had secretly prepared for this day. They had never trusted each other enough to share their work. They had built weapons in isolation, each nation hiding its greatest secrets from its allies and enemies alike. Now, as extinction approached, those secrets began to surface. The first sign came 6 hours after the alien broadcast. The panic had not stopped, but something else had begun. In an emergency session of the United Nations, something unprecedented happened. Every nation voted yes. The resolution was called the Terra Compact. It was written in simple language that left no room for interpretation. All military forces on Earth would unite under a single command. All weapons, all ships, all resources would be shared. All secrets would be revealed. For the first time in human history, There would be no nations. There would only be Earth. The vote was unanimous. Even countries that had been at war with each other for generations signed without hesitation. Ancient enemies shook hands. Rival intelligence agencies shared files that their officers would have died to protect just hours before. When the Dominion demanded surrender, they expected fear. They expected begging. They expected humanity to turn on itself, to fight over who would get to survive as slaves. They did not expect unity. Ambassador Zyrith Cole received Earth's response exactly 23 hours after his ultimatum. It came in every language humanity had ever spoken, broadcast from every transmitter on the planet. It was not a surrender. It was not a negotiation. It was 3 words, spoken by a unified species for the first time in history. Come and take it. On the Dominion flagship, Zyrith Cole stared at the message in confusion. His translators checked their work 3 times. His advisors whispered among themselves. None of them understood. They are refusing? Asked High Commander Varath, his mandibles clicking with surprise. A species with 47 ships is refusing to surrender to 4,000? They are insane, said another officer. Their fear has broken their minds, but Zyrith Cole was quiet. He had studied humanity longer than any other Dominion scholar. He had watched their history, their wars, their endless capacity for violence. He had seen what they did to each other, the genocides, the atomic bombs, the trenches filled with poison gas. He had recommended the extermination of humanity for exactly this reason. Perhaps they are insane, he said slowly. Or perhaps we have made a mistake. What mistake could we have made? Commander Varath laughed. They are primitives. They have barely left their own planet. We have given them something they have never had before, Zyrith Cole said. We have given them a common enemy. He turned back to the window and watched the distant blue dot that was Earth growing slowly larger. In all their history, humans have never stopped fighting, but they have also never stopped surviving. They kill each other constantly, yet their population grows. They destroy themselves with wars and plagues and disasters, yet they always rebuild. They are not like other species we have conquered. What are they? Then, Zyrith Cole was silent for a long moment. They are survivors, he said finally. And we have just given them a reason to survive together. Behind him, his officers laughed. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of species. They had faced resistance before. It had never mattered. Superior technology always won. Superior numbers always won. The laws of warfare were simple and unchanging. But as the fleet continued its approach toward Earth, Zyrith Cole felt something he had not felt in centuries of conquest. He felt doubt. On Earth, the preparations had begun. Secret facilities opened their doors. Hidden weapons powered up for the first time. Scientists and soldiers who had never met before shook hands and shared knowledge that would have been worth trillions just days ago. And in the hearts of 8 billion humans, something ancient awakened. Something that had been born in the caves and jungles of prehistory. Something that had driven them to conquer their world. To split the atom. To walk on the moon. The will to survive. The will to fight. The Dominion had announced war against Earth. They expected surrender. They expected fear. They expected an easy victory against primitive beings who had barely discovered fire in the cosmic scale of time. They had no idea what was coming. The Dominion fleet crossed the orbit of Neptune on the 3rd day. Their sensors swept the outer solar system, searching for any sign of human resistance. They found nothing but ice and rock and the cold emptiness of space. High Commander Varath stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser and smiled. The humans had sent their defiant message, but defiance without power was just noise. His scouts had mapped every human vessel in the system, 47 military ships, 200 civilian transports, a handful of mining stations. Nothing that could slow his fleet for even a moment. Send the order, he said. Formation Alpha. We will reach Earth in 6 days. Begin preparing the landing forces. His officers moved to obey. Around him, the bridge hummed with quiet efficiency. The Dominion war machine was perfect. Every officer knew their role. Every ship knew its position. They had done this hundreds of times before. Then the first alarm sounded. Commander, said a sensor officer, his voice confused. We are detecting energy signatures on Triton, the Neptune moon. Varath frowned. Human records show no bases there. The signatures are massive, Commander. They are growing. On the surface of Triton, something that had been sleeping for 15 years began to wake up. Deep beneath the ice, Fusion reactors that had never been turned on roared to life. Computers that had been waiting in silent darkness connected to networks that did not officially exist. The first platform rose from the frozen surface like a metal giant climbing out of its grave. Then another. Then another. Within an hour, 47 weapon platforms stood on Triton, their cannons pointing toward the approaching fleet. They were not alone. On Pluto, similar platforms emerged, on the moons of Uranus, on asteroids that human records listed as uninhabited. Across the outer solar system, humanity revealed what it had been hiding for decades. Project Safeguard, Project Iron Sky, Project Last Resort, a dozen secret programs from a dozen nations, now united under a single command. Weapons that had been built in paranoid secrecy, designed for wars that their creators hoped would never come. They had never been designed to fight aliens. They had been designed for each other. Massive railguns that could accelerate projectiles to a fraction of light speed, laser batteries that could cut through the thickest armor, missile platforms loaded with nuclear weapons that made the old strategic arsenals look like firecrackers. Now they had a new target. Commander Varath stared at his sensor display as red dots appeared across the system. "How many?" he asked, his voice suddenly quiet. 412 weapon platforms confirmed, said the sensor officer. "Still counting. That is impossible. Our scouts found nothing. They were underground, Commander, hidden beneath the surface. We were not looking for them." For the first time in his long career, Varath felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The humans had been preparing for war. Not against the Dominion specifically, but against something. They had spent decades and unimaginable resources building weapons and hiding them across their solar system. What kind of species did this? On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez walked into the command center that had been built beneath the Swiss Alps. It was a massive room filled with screens and computers and hundreds of people working at stations. At the center was a raised platform where the unified military command would direct the defense of humanity. She had been chosen to lead not because she was a soldier, but because she understood the weapons better than anyone alive. She had helped design many of them. She had spent her life preparing for a war that everyone else thought was impossible. "Status report," she said, her voice calm and steady. "All outer system platforms are active," reported General Morrison, who now served as her second in command. "The fleet is holding position in the asteroid belt. All ground-based defenses are online. What about the volunteers?" Morrison's face softened slightly. "Still coming. Every recruitment center on the planet is overwhelmed. We have more volunteers than we can process." This was the part that the Dominion would never understand. The weapons were impressive, but they were just metal and fire. The real weapon was the 8 billion humans who had decided, together, that they would not go quietly into the night. Factories around the world ran day and night. Workers who had been building cars last week were now building missiles. Engineers who had designed phones were now designing targeting systems. Teachers and accountants and shopkeepers lined up to learn how to fight. In China, a retired grandmother named Liu Wei organized her entire apartment building into a civil defense unit. In Nigeria, a teenage boy named Emeka Obi hacked into a university computer system to help analyze Dominion communication signals. In Brazil, a priest named Father Carlos opened his church as a shelter and a recruitment center at the same time. Everyone had something to give. Everyone had something to fight for. The Dominion had conquered species that surrendered at the first sign of overwhelming force. They had conquered species that fought in organized armies that could be outmaneuvered and destroyed. They had conquered species that hid and hoped the danger would pass. They had never conquered a species that fought back with everything it had, with every single member of its population, with a fury born from millions of years of survival on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. Ambassador Zyrith Cole studied the sensor data in his private chambers. The weapon platforms were troubling, but not decisive. The Dominion still had superior numbers and superior technology. What troubled him more was the information his intelligence officers were gathering from human communications. The humans were not just building weapons. They were sharing knowledge. Scientific research that had been classified for decades was now freely available. Military secrets that nations had killed to protect were being taught to anyone who wanted to learn. The humans were not just preparing to fight. They were preparing to evolve. "They are upgrading their ships," reported Intelligence Officer Nex. "They are installing weapon systems we have never seen before. Their communication networks have completely changed in the last 40 hours. They are learning from our transmissions and adapting. How quickly? Faster than any species we have encountered. They are making changes in hours that should take years. Xyrith Cole nodded slowly. This was what he had feared. The humans had a gift that the Dominion had never fully appreciated. They called it innovation. The ability to look at a problem and find solutions that no one else had considered. The ability to fail and learn and try again until they succeeded. The Dominion had superior technology because they had been developing it for 10,000 years. But their technology advanced slowly, carefully, following established paths. The humans had gone from horse-drawn carriages to nuclear power in less than 2 centuries. They had gone from wooden ships to spacecraft in a single lifetime. What would they become if they had time to study Dominion technology? This was why the Seers had ordered humanity's destruction. Not because they were a threat now, but because of what they could become. On Earth, Elena Vasquez received a priority message from the listening stations on Mars. Her team had been working around the clock to analyze captured Dominion signals. Now they had something to show for it. "We cracked their basic encryption," said Dr. Park, a Korean communications specialist who had not slept in 3 days. "Their command structure is hierarchical. Everything flows from the top down. If we can disrupt their command ships, their fleet will lose coordination." Elena studied the data. "What about their weapons? Plasma-based, more powerful than anything we have, but slower to recharge. Our railguns fire faster. If we can get close enough, we can trade shots and win through volume of fire. Their shields? Strong against energy weapons, weaker against physical projectiles." Dr. Park smiled for the first time in days. They designed their defenses for the wars they expected to fight. They did not expect to fight humans. Elena felt something she had not felt since the invasion began. Hope. Small and fragile, but real. They could not match the Dominion in numbers or technology, but they could adapt, they could innovate, they could find the weaknesses that the enemy did not know it had. She opened a channel to all human forces across the solar system. Soldiers on Mars, engineers on the Moon, pilots in the asteroid belt, volunteers training on Earth, 8 billion humans who had decided to stand together. "This is Commander Vasquez," she said. "The enemy is approaching. They think they know what we are. They think they know what we can do. They are wrong." She paused, letting the words sink in. "We are humanity. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. We have split the atom and walked on the moon and built wonders that our ancestors would have called magic. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We adapt. We overcome. We survive." Around the solar system, humans listened. Soldiers checked their weapons. Pilots ran final diagnostics. Engineers made last-minute adjustments. Everyone prepared for what was coming. "They want a war," Elena said. "Let us show them what war means to humanity." The Dominion fleet continued its approach, confident in its overwhelming power. They had no idea that they were not flying toward a helpless, primitive world. They were flying into a trap set by a species that had been preparing for war since the first human picked up a rock and threw it at an enemy. The awakening had begun, and the stars themselves would tremble before it ended. The Battle of Jupiter's Shadow began at 0600 hours on the 7th day after the invasion started. The Dominion fleet had crossed the asteroid belt and was approaching the gas giant. Their commanders expected no resistance until they reached Mars. They were wrong. Captain Marcus Chen commanded the destroyer Relentless. It was one of the oldest ships in the human fleet, built before the invasion had seemed possible. Its armor was thin. Its weapons were outdated. Its crew numbered only 47. But Marcus Chen had not spent his career following rules. He had spent it finding ways to win, when winning seemed impossible. Now, hiding in the shadow of Ganymede, he watched the Dominion fleet approach and waited. "They are in range," said Lieutenant Park, his weapons officer. "Their formation is tight. They are not expecting contact." Marcus nodded. Around him, hidden among Jupiter's moons, waited 32 other human ships. They were the fastest vessels in the fleet, chosen for this mission, because they could hit hard and run before the enemy could respond. "All ships," Marcus said into his communicator, "execute attack pattern Omega. Target their sensor arrays and communication relays. We are not here to win. We are here to blind them." 32 ships burst from hiding at once. They came from behind moons, from within asteroid clouds. From places the Dominion sensors had dismissed as empty, their railguns fired before the enemy could react, sending streams of metal slugs into the lead ships of the alien fleet. The Dominion had shields that could stop energy weapons. They had never faced projectiles moving at a fraction of light speed. The first volley tore through sensor arrays, shattered communication dishes, and punched holes in the thin armor around bridge sections. High Commander Vareth stared at his tactical display in shock. "Return fire," he shouted. "All ships, return fire." But the humans were already moving. They did not fly in formation like Dominion ships. They scattered in every direction, using the moons as cover, their small size making them hard to track. Dominion plasma cannons fired, filling space with blue-white death, but the human ships were too fast and too unpredictable. "Their tactics make no sense," said Vareth's tactical officer. "They are not holding formation. They are not coordinating. It is chaos." "It is not chaos," Vareth said quietly. "It is improvisation." Captain Chen brought the Relentless around the dark side of Callisto. His ship had taken a glancing hit from a plasma bolt, and his engineer was working to keep the engines running. But he had destroyed 2 Dominion sensor arrays and damaged a communication relay. The enemy fleet was flying half-blind. "Captain," said his sensor officer, "I am detecting a carrier at coordinates 77 Mark III. Minimal escort. I think it is a repair ship." Marcus looked at the data. The carrier was huge, easily 100 times the mass of his destroyer. It would be carrying supplies, replacement parts, and most importantly, the equipment the Dominion needed to repair their damaged sensors. "If we destroy that carrier," he said slowly, "they stay blind. Captain, our shields are failing. Our ammunition is at 30%. We cannot survive a direct assault." Marcus Chen looked at his crew. 46 people who had volunteered for what everyone knew might be a suicide mission. They looked back at him with eyes that held no fear, only determination. "Open a channel to Fleet Command," he said. "Tell them the Relentless is making an attack run on the enemy carrier. Tell them," he paused, searching for the right words, "tell them we were honored to serve." The Relentless accelerated toward the carrier. Dominion escort ships moved to intercept, but Marcus had spent his whole career racing through enemy fire. He twisted and turned, using every trick he knew, burning his engines harder than they were designed to handle. Plasma bolts flashed past the viewports. The ship shuddered as a near miss overloaded a shield generator. The temperature on the bridge rose as the hull began to heat from the friction of particles at high speed. They were not going to survive this run. Marcus knew it. His crew knew it. But that was not the point. The point was to hurt the enemy so badly that they would remember this day forever. At the last moment, Marcus aimed his ship directly at the carrier's hangar bay. It was open, waiting for damaged ships to return. It was also the weakest point in the carrier's armor. "It has been an honor," he said. The Relentless hit the hangar at full speed and kept going, tearing through the carrier's interior until it reached the reactor section. Marcus pressed the self-destruct button with steady hands. The explosion turned the carrier into an expanding cloud of fire and metal. It was visible from Earth. On the Dominion flagship, Ambassador Zyrith Cole watched the explosion with something close to horror. "One ship," he said. "One small ship destroyed a carrier that cost 10,000 resources to build." "The human captain was insane," said Commander Vareth. "It was a suicide attack. No rational being would make such a sacrifice." "Then we are not fighting rational beings." Zyrith Cole turned away from the display. "We are fighting humans." The battle raged for 12 more hours. The human ships could not match the Dominion in firepower or numbers, but they fought with a ferocity that the aliens had never encountered. When their weapons ran empty, they rammed enemy ships. When their engines failed, they detonated their reactors. When they had nothing left, they transmitted messages of defiance until the moment of their death. Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo of the destroyer Defiant reprogrammed her ship's mining drones in the middle of combat. She turned them into guided missiles, sending them into the Dominion formation where they exploded against shield generators and sensor arrays. On Earth, a 19-year-old hacker named Jin-Soo Park sat in his bedroom in Seoul and fought a different kind of war. He had found a vulnerability in the Dominion communication protocols. While the fleet battled among Jupiter's moons, he broadcast a virus that scrambled enemy targeting data for precious minutes. Those minutes saved 7 human ships. By the time the battle ended, the human fleet had been shattered. 24 of the 33 ships that had begun the attack were destroyed. Over 1,000 human soldiers were dead, but they had taken 200 Dominion ships with them. The ratio was unsustainable. Everyone knew that. At this rate, humanity would run out of ships long before the Dominion did. But the numbers told only part of the story. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion had been hurt. Not scratched, not annoyed. Hurt. Their repair carrier was gone. Their sensors were damaged across a third of their fleet. Their communication network had been compromised, and more importantly, their confidence had been shaken. High Commander Vareth called a meeting of his senior officers after the battle. "Explain to me," he said quietly, "how 47 primitive ships destroyed 200 of ours. They did not fight like any species we have encountered," said his tactical officer. "They did not retreat when damaged. They did not surrender when surrounded. They attacked until they could no longer function. Their tactics were unpredictable," said another officer. "Our computers could not anticipate their movements because their movements made no tactical sense. They were willing to sacrifice themselves for minor gains. It is their psychology," said Zyrith Cole from the corner of the room. "We have studied them. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. Their entire history is one of constant warfare. They do not fear death the way other species do. They fear failure. They fear surrender. They would rather die fighting than live as slaves." Vareth slammed his fist against the table. "They are primitives. They have had spaceflight for less than a century. And yet we lost 200 ships today." Zyrith Cole's voice was calm. "Commander, I warned the Council that humanity was dangerous. I warned them that we should destroy Earth from orbit, without giving them time to prepare. They did not listen. Now we are learning why I was afraid. On Earth, the news of the battle spread quickly. The losses were heavy, and there was mourning in every nation. But there was also something else. Pride. The primitive humans had fought the mighty Dominion and made them bleed." Elena Vasquez stood in the command center and read the casualty lists. So many names, so many heroes. Captain Marcus Chen, Lieutenant Aisha Okonkwo, hundreds of others who had given everything so that humanity could have a chance. "The next wave of ships will be ready in 72 hours, reported General Morrison. "Volunteers are still flooding in. Production has increased by 40%. Elena nodded. The Battle of Jupiter's Shadow had been a defeat, but it had also been a statement. Humanity would not go quietly. Humanity would make the Dominion pay for every inch of space they took. She opened a channel to all human forces. "Today we lost brave men and women," she said. "Today we learned the cost of this war. But today we also taught the enemy something they did not know. We taught them that humanity fights back. We taught them that we do not surrender. We taught them that the stars are not theirs to take." She paused, letting her words sink in across the solar system. "This is not the end. This is the beginning. Remember the relentless. Remember Captain Chen. Remember everyone who died today. And when you face the enemy again, make them remember too." The Dominion had won the battle. But looking at the damage reports, looking at the fear in the eyes of his officers, High Commander Vareth began to wonder if they could truly win the war. Humanity had tasted first blood, and they wanted more. The Dominion reached Mars 31 days after the invasion began. They had lost 400 ships since crossing into human space. By any normal calculation, that number was meaningless against a fleet of nearly 4,000. But the losses were starting to matter. The humans did not fight like other species. They ambushed supply convoys. They sabotaged communication relays. They turned asteroid mining stations into weapon platforms and crashed them into capital ships. Every day brought new attacks, new losses, new proof that this war would not be the easy conquest the Dominion had expected. High Commander Vareth established a forward base on Phobos, the larger of Mars's 2 moons. From there, he could launch the final assault on Earth. His remaining fleet of 3,500 ships still outnumbered the human forces by more than 20 to 1. Victory was still certain, but Ambassador Zyrith Cole was not so sure. He stood in his quarters on the flagship, studying human broadcasts that his intelligence officers had intercepted. The humans were not panicking. They were not negotiating. They were building. Every factory on Earth was producing weapons. Every university was training soldiers. Every citizen was preparing to fight. "They know they cannot win," said his aide. "Why do they keep fighting?" Because winning and losing mean different things to humans, Zyrith Cole replied. Other species surrender when defeat is certain. They calculate the odds and make rational choices. Humans do not think this way. They will fight even when there is no hope, simply because surrender is unacceptable to them. That is madness. Perhaps, or perhaps it is why they survived their death world when so many other species would have perished. On Earth, Elena Vasquez was planning something that everyone called madness too. Operation Prometheus. A strike at the heart of the enemy. A team of humans would infiltrate the Dominion flagship, capture Ambassador Zyrith Cole, and broadcast his capture to both species. It would not win the war, but it would prove that no one in the Dominion was safe. It would show that humans could reach out and touch their enemies wherever they hid. The team was led by Colonel David Oyalaran. He was 47 years old, born in Lagos, raised in London, trained by the best special forces units on 3 continents. He had survived 17 combat deployments and countless missions that officially never happened. When Elena asked him to lead a suicide mission against the most powerful warship in the galaxy, he had smiled and asked when they were leaving. His team included 12 soldiers from 12 different countries. There was Sergeant Yuki Tanaka from Japan, who could fly anything with wings or engines. There was Corporal Ahmed Hassan from Egypt, who had memorized the internal layout of Dominion ships from captured wreckage. There was Private First Class Maria Santos from Mexico, who had grown up hunting in the mountains and could hit a target from 2 kilometers away. They were the best humanity had. They were also probably going to die. The mission began on a Tuesday. The team traveled to Mars on a stealth transport, using technology that had been developed for a war between nations and never used. From there, they transferred to captured Dominion shuttles, modified to appear on enemy sensors as friendly ships. Getting past the Dominion perimeter was almost too easy. The enemy was focused on preparing for the assault on Earth. They were not expecting a dozen humans in stolen uniforms to fly directly into the heart of their fleet. Remember, David told his team as they approached the flagship, we are not here to destroy the ship. We are here to capture the ambassador and get out. Minimal engagement, maximum speed, and if we cannot get out? Asked Sergeant Tanaka. David smiled grimly. Then we make sure they remember us. The shuttle docked at a secondary hangar on the flagship's lower section. The team moved quickly and quietly, using blueprints that Ahmed Hassan had reconstructed from fragments of destroyed vessels. They wore Dominion maintenance uniforms and carried weapons hidden beneath their clothes. The first patrol they encountered did not even look at them twice. The second patrol stopped to ask a question that Ahmed answered in fluent Velkorath, learned from intercepted communications. The third patrol was not so easy to fool. David killed the first guard before the alien could raise an alarm. Maria killed the second, with a knife throw that should have been impossible in the ship's artificial gravity. The team hid the bodies and kept moving. They reached the command deck in 47 minutes. Ambassador Zyrith Cole's private quarters were just beyond the main bridge, protected by a squad of elite guards and a security system that had never been breached. David looked at his team. We have one chance at this. The moment we attack, they will know we are here. We have maybe 3 minutes before reinforcements arrive. We go in hard. We grab the target. We get to the extraction point. 3 minutes is a long time, said Corporal Hassan with a small smile. Then let us not waste any of it. They breached the door with explosives that Ahmed had assembled from parts scavenged during their journey through the ship. The guards were good. They had been trained for centuries. They had never failed. But they had never faced humans who had been training for war since before recorded history. The firefight lasted 45 seconds. 6 guards died. 2 members of David's team were wounded. When the smoke cleared, Ambassador Zyrith Cole stood alone in his quarters, surrounded by humans pointing weapons at his heart. You cannot escape, the ambassador said calmly. This ship holds 10,000 soldiers. You will be captured and executed. Maybe, said David. But first, you are going to tell us why. Why what? Why you came to destroy us. You crossed the galaxy with 4,000 ships to exterminate a species that had barely left its own planet. Why? Zyrith Cole was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. It was not a happy sound. You truly do not know, he said. You have no idea what you are. Enlighten us. The ambassador sat down in his chair, suddenly looking very old and very tired. Our seers have a gift. They can see the threads of possibility that extend into the future. It is not perfect. They cannot predict everything, but they can see patterns, trends, likely outcomes. He looked at David with his dark eyes. 500 years ago, our seers looked at the galaxy and saw a future where the Dominion no longer existed. Every thread of possibility led to the same place. In every version of the future they could see, the Dominion fell. What does that have to do with us? In every version of that future, the Dominion was destroyed by the same species. A young race from a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. A species that had barely discovered fire in cosmic terms. A species that the seers called the Inheritors. David felt something cold settle in his stomach. You came to kill us because of a prophecy? We came to kill you because of certainty. Zyreth Cole leaned forward. The seers are never wrong. Every species that has risen to challenge us, they predicted. Every war, every rebellion, every threat to our empire, they saw coming, and they all saw the same thing about humanity. If you are allowed to grow, you will become something that cannot be stopped. You will spread across the galaxy like a fire. You will topple empires that have stood for 10,000 years. You will inherit the stars. The room was silent. So you tried to destroy us before we could grow, David said slowly. You attacked a planet of primitives because you were afraid of what we would become. Fear is a logical response to extinction. David smiled. It was not a kind smile. You came to kill us because of what we might become someday. But you know what you actually did? You woke us up. You united us. You showed us that the stars are full of enemies. And now you get to see what we become when we are angry. He gestured to his team. Secure him. We are leaving. They did not escape cleanly. The alarms were already sounding when they reached the hangar. Fighting through the corridors cost them 3 more soldiers. By the time they reached the shuttle, only 7 of the original 12 remained, but they had the ambassador. As the shuttle pulled away from the flagship, chased by Dominion fighters, David broadcast a message to every frequency that humans could reach. This is Colonel David Oyeleran. We have captured Ambassador Zyreth Cole. We know why they came for us. They saw the future, and they were afraid. They saw what humanity would become, and it terrified them. He paused as the shuttle rocked from a near miss. They came to destroy us because of prophecy. They came because they knew that one day, we would take the stars from them. Well, I have a message for the Dominion. The prophecy is coming true, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. The shuttle escaped. The ambassador was taken to a secure facility on Earth, and across the solar system, humans heard the truth about why the aliens had come. They had come because they were afraid, and now humanity had a reason to make those fears come true. The capture of Ambassador Zyreth Cole changed everything. High Commander Varath launched an immediate assault on Earth, hoping to end the war before the humans could use their prisoner. His fleet descended on the planet like a swarm of metal locusts, plasma cannons firing, ground troops ready to deploy. They were met with a wall of fire. Humanity had spent the month of the invasion preparing for this moment. Weapon platforms orbited the planet by the hundreds. Ground-based railguns could reach targets in low orbit. Every major city had anti-aircraft batteries that had been built in secret decades ago. And in space, what remained of the human fleet formed a line that they had sworn never to break. The Battle of Earth lasted 11 days. The Dominion had superior technology. They had superior numbers. They had centuries of experience conquering worlds. But they were fighting for glory and expansion. The humans were fighting for their home, their families, their right to exist. On the 8th day, Commander Elena Vasquez led a counterattack that broke through the Dominion lines. Her flagship, the TSS Unity, was the first ship to be built after the invasion began. It carried weapons that had been designed by humans who studied captured Dominion technology and found ways to make it better. On the 9th day, the first Dominion capital ship was destroyed in Earth orbit. Its explosion was visible during the daytime. On the 11th day, High Commander Varath ordered a retreat. He had lost 800 more ships. His ground forces had been slaughtered by humans who fought from every building, every tunnel, every hole in the ground. His soldiers reported that human civilians attacked them with kitchen knives and farming tools when they ran out of ammunition. The Dominion fell back to Mars, then to the asteroid belt, then beyond Jupiter. At every step, the humans followed, hitting their supply lines, destroying their repair ships, never letting them rest. The war did not end with the Battle of Earth. It transformed. Humanity had tasted victory. They had learned that the Dominion could be hurt, and they had heard the prophecy. The seers had said that humanity would inherit the stars. Now they intended to prove the seers right. Within 5 years, Earth had built a fleet of 2,000 warships. Human factories produced more ships in a month than the Dominion could build in a year. Human scientists studied captured technology and improved it. Human soldiers trained with a ferocity that made the Dominion veterans look soft. The Terran Republic was formally established on the anniversary of the invasion. Every nation on Earth dissolved itself and joined the new government. Old borders became meaningless. Old hatreds were forgotten. Humanity had found something more important than the differences that had divided them for millennia. They had found purpose. Commander Elena Vasquez was promoted to Supreme Commander of the Terran Expeditionary Force. She led the first human fleet beyond the solar system, through the same space gate that the Dominion had used to reach Earth. On the other side, she found a galaxy at war. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of species over 10,000 years. Most had been enslaved, some had been exterminated, but all of them remembered their freedom. When word spread that a young species called humanity had broken the Dominion fleet, rebellions erupted on a dozen worlds. Humanity did not conquer these worlds. They liberated them. The Velkorath species had built their empire on fear and submission. They did not know how to respond to a species that offered freedom instead. Human ships arrived at enslaved planets and broadcasted the same message. Join us or stand aside. We are here to break your chains. Some species were suspicious. They had been betrayed before. But the humans did not demand tribute or submission. They asked only for alliance against the common enemy. They shared their technology. They trained local resistance fighters. They died defending worlds that they had never seen before. Within a decade, the Dominion was crumbling. Supreme Commander Vasquez led the final assault on the Dominion homeworld herself. Her fleet numbered 5,000 ships, crewed by humans and members of 23 allied species. They faced the last Dominion fleet in orbit around a gray world called Velkora Prime. The battle lasted 2 hours. When it was over, the Dominion surrendered unconditionally. Their 10,000-year empire was finished. Their fleets were scrap metal drifting in space. Their seers had been right all along. Humanity had inherited the stars. Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship, the TRS Unconquered, and looked down at the conquered world. She was 63 years old now, her hair gray, her face lined with the weight of command. She had spent half her life fighting this war. She had lost friends, family, and pieces of her soul that she would never get back, but she had won. Ambassador Zyrith Cole was brought before her. He had spent the war years as a prisoner, watching his empire fall, watching the prophecy come true exactly as his seers had predicted. He was old and thin, his gray skin hanging loose on his bones. "You were right," Elena said quietly. "Your seers saw the future. They saw us coming. We could not stop it," Zyrith Cole replied. "We tried for 500 years. We conquered and destroyed and enslaved, hoping to find a way to change what was written. It was all for nothing. Why did you not simply leave us alone? Why did you not make peace?" The old ambassador looked at her with something like regret. "Because we were afraid. Because we saw what you would become. And we could not accept it. We thought that if we struck first, hard enough, we could prevent the inevitable." He laughed bitterly. "Instead, we created it. If we had left Earth alone, you might have destroyed yourselves in a few more centuries. Your own weapons, your own hatred. But we united you. We gave you a common enemy. We made you into the weapon that destroyed us." Elena nodded slowly. "The seers were right about us, but they were wrong about one thing." "What?" "We did not destroy the Dominion because of destiny or prophecy. We destroyed it because you gave us no choice. You came to our world and told us to surrender. You threatened our children. You burned our cities." She leaned forward. "We are humanity. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we do not start fights." Her eyes hardened. "But we finish them." The Velkorath became a protectorate of the Terran Republic. Their worlds were not destroyed. Their people were not enslaved. Humanity had learned from the mistakes of their enemies. They built an alliance based on freedom and mutual defense, not conquest and fear. The galaxy entered a new era of peace, not because war had ended, but because everyone knew what would happen if they started one. Human ships patrolled the space lanes. Human diplomats mediated disputes. and human soldiers stood ready to defend any world that asked for help. 100 years later, the war was history. Children learned about it in school, about the day the aliens had threatened Earth and humanity had answered with fire and courage. They learned about Captain Marcus Chen and his final charge, about Colonel David Oyeleran and the impossible mission, about Supreme Commander Elena Vasquez, who had led humanity from the edge of extinction to the stars. Statues of these heroes stood on 100 worlds. On Earth, in a park in the rebuilt city of New York, there was a simple memorial. It was a wall of black stone with names carved into it. Millions of names. Every human who had died in the war, every soldier and civilian, every pilot and engineer, every person who had given their life so that humanity could survive. At the bottom of the wall, there was an inscription in every language humanity had ever spoken. They announced war against us. We answered. The stars remember. And on every starship, every colony, every outpost bearing the flag of the Terran Republic, another phrase was inscribed. It was Latin, a language that had been dead for centuries before the invasion. But humans had long memories, and they never forgot their history. Per aspera ad astra, through hardship, to the stars, the seers had been right. Humanity had inherited the galaxy, but they had not taken it through conquest or fear. They had earned it through blood and sacrifice and an unbreakable will to survive. The Vel'Korath had come to Earth expecting to find primitives who would bow before superior power. Instead, they had awakened something ancient and terrible, something that had been forged in the fires of a Deathworld and hardened by millions of years of struggle. They had awakened humanity, and the stars would never be the same. In the great archive on Vel'Kora Prime, the records of the war were preserved. Future generations would study them and wonder at the courage and madness of the species called human. They would read the words that Elena Vasquez had spoken to the captured ambassador and shiver at their cold certainty, and they would understand, finally, why the seers had been afraid. Humanity did not fight to survive. They fought to win. They fought until there was nothing left to fight. They fought with a fury that burned brighter than stars and a determination that could move worlds. The Dominion had announced war against Earth. Humanity's response had shaken the stars, and the galaxy would remember forever.